The morning sun crept over the ancient walls of Ilorin, like a hesitant visitor, painting the rusty, corrugated iron roofs in shades of amber and gold. The city was waking, its familiar sounds filtering through the thin walls of our compound. The distant call to prayer from the central mosque, the clatter of pots in Iya Bimpe's kitchen, and the persistent crowing of Baba Tunde's rooster, which had somehow developed the habit of announcing dawn at least 3 hours too early. I was standing by the communal tap, my bucket half full, when I heard the familiar creak of the blue-painted gate. We all knew that sound. It was the sound of Funke, returning from wherever she went every night, slipping in just as the rest of us were stumbling out of bed to begin our daily struggles. "Good morning, Mr. Conley," she said softly, her voice barely carrying across the dusty compound. Her eyes were ringed with dark circles that had become more pronounced over the past 8 months. Her skin, once vibrant like fresh palm oil, had taken on a sallow, almost grayish hue. "Morning," I replied, not meeting her gaze. I was ashamed to admit that I had already joined the chorus of whispers that followed her, like a persistent shadow. She walked past me toward the staircase that led to her family's apartment on the first floor, her steps dragging as if each one required an immense effort. The faint scent of her perfume, something floral and expensive, lingered in the air after she passed. I watched her go, noticing how her shoulders slumped forward, how her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the railing. That was when Iya Bimpe emerged from her ground-floor apartment, her wrapper tied tightly around her ample frame, her face arranged in that particular expression she wore when she had something important to share. "Ah, Mr. Conley," she called out, her voice pitched to carry across the compound. "You see, Am? You see how she dey drag herself? An, something must dey happen to that girl." I shifted uncomfortably, my bucket now overflowing with water I hadn't noticed was still running. "Iya Bimpe, we shouldn't gossip. It's not our business." But even as I said it, I felt the hypocrisy in my words. Just last week, I had joined a group of neighbors huddled around the generator room, speculating about Funky's mysterious nightly excursions. We had crafted elaborate theories, each more scandalous than the last. "Oga Kunle Abeg," she waved her hand dismissively. "You think we know they see? Every night at exactly 9:45, she go out. Fine girl like that, all dressed up, smelling like the wives of governors. She come back by 6 a.m. looking like somebody weighed 'em beat for night. What you think she dey do?" I didn't answer. We both knew what she was implying. Her father, Baba Tunde, is a good man, Iya Bimpe continued, shaking her head sadly. A retired civil servant, paid his dues to this country. But even the best father cannot control a wayward daughter. The Bible says, "Spare the rod and spoil the child." Maybe Baba Tunde was too soft with her. At that moment, the door to the first-floor apartment opened, and Baba Tunde himself emerged. He was a tall man, though age and illness had hunched his frame considerably. His eyes, once sharp and perceptive, now had a milky film over them, the unmistakable sign of glaucoma that had been worsening over the past year. He navigated the hallway with the careful, tentative steps of someone who could only see shadows and shapes. "Good morning, Mr. Conley. Good morning, Iya Bimpe," he called out, his voice still carrying the authority of his years in government service. "The Lord has blessed us with another day." "Good morning, Baba Tunde," we chorused, our voices suddenly meek. "Have you seen Funke?" he asked, his head turning toward the direction of my voice. "She went out early this morning. I wanted her to help me with my medication." The lie came easily to Iya Bimpe. "Ah, Baba, I think I saw her go to the market. You know how these young girls are. They like to catch the early morning traders before the prices go up." Baba Tunde smiled, a gentle expression that lit up his weathered face. "That's my Funka. Always thinking of others. Such a good girl." I felt a sharp pang in my chest. Good girl. If only he knew what we all suspected. "Baba," I said, trying to change the subject, "how is the eye? Any improvement?" The old man's face fell slightly. "The same, Mr. Kunle. The same. The doctors say I need surgery soon, but—" He trailed off, waving a hand vaguely. "The government pension has not come in 2 years. 2 years! They keep telling us to wait, that the system is being updated. But how does a man wait when his eyes are failing?" His words hung in the air, heavy with resignation. We had all heard about the pension arrears. Half the retired civil servants in Ilorin were in the same situation. Men and women who had served their country for 35 years now left to suffer in their old age while the bureaucracy moved at its glacial pace. "God will provide," I said, the words sounding hollow, even to my ears. "God will provide," Baba Tunde echoed, but there was doubt in his voice. He retreated back into his apartment, and Iya Bimpe immediately leaned in close to me. "You see, the man needs money for surgery, and the daughter is out there bringing shame to the family. If she wanted to help, there are other ways. Honest ways." The water in my bucket had gone cold, and I realized I had been standing there too long. "Iya Bimpe, let us not judge. We don't know the full story." But even as I said it, I was already forming my own judgments. Every compound in Ilorin has its own rhythm, its own heartbeat. Ours, nestled in the GRA area, was a community of 12 families living in a converted colonial-era building that had seen better days. The walls were cracked in places, and the paint had long since faded to a pale, peeling yellow. But it was home, and Baba Tunde had kept the rent affordable even as inflation ate away at everyone's income. "Country hard, make we no suffocate each other," he would say whenever anyone thanked him for not raising the rent. It was his mantra, his philosophy of survival in a nation where everyone seemed to be grasping for whatever they could get. But the compound also had its dark side, and that dark side was the gossip that flowed as freely as the water from the communal tap. Over the next few weeks, Funka's nightly routine became a source of increasingly elaborate speculation. The women gathered by the water pumping machine every morning, their voices low, but their words sharp. "Last night I heard the car come at exactly 9:45, Iya Ngozi said, her eyes wide with excitement. "I was sitting on my veranda, and I saw everything. She was wearing a dress that barely covered her knees. And the perfume! Even from my veranda, I could smell it." "Now the same car way they always pick her?" another neighbor asked. "Same car, Blue Bolt. The driver, I don't know him, but he's always the same one." And so the rumors multiplied. Some said Funky worked at a high-end lounge in the VIP area of Ilorin. Others, more scandalously, suggested she had become the mistress of a wealthy politician who visited town only at night. A few even whispered about the possibility of her being involved in something darker, something involving the notorious Yahoo Boys who operated in the city's underworld. The fact that she always returned looking exhausted only fueled their theories. "You see her eyes?" Iya Bimpe would say, shaking her head theatrically. "Those are the eyes of somebody who doesn't sleep at night. Anybody who does legitimate work sleeps at night, not during the day. She is always sleeping through the afternoon, another woman would add. I have seen her through her window. She just lies there like a corpse, not moving for hours. Slowly, the judgment spread beyond the women to the men. Even those who had previously refused to participate in the gossip began to form their own opinions. Bro Emeka, a quiet, hard-working bolt driver who lived in the boys' quarters, would often shake his head when Funke passed. "Such a shame," he would mutter to me. "A good girl from a good family." What would her mother say if she were still alive? Funke's mother had died 5 years earlier, a victim of the cancer that seemed to claim so many women in their prime. Baba Tunde had never remarried, pouring all his love and attention into raising his only daughter. And now, it seemed, that daughter was bringing shame upon his name. I, too, found myself avoiding Funke. When she came out to the compound to sweep or fetch water, I would make an excuse to leave. When she greeted me, I would offer a perfunctory response, my eyes sliding past her. I told myself it was because I didn't want to be associated with her reputation, but deep down, I knew it was because I had already judged her guilty. Only one person in the compound seemed to see Funke differently, and that was the new tenant, a young woman named Chidinma, who had just moved into the room next to mine. She was a recent university graduate working at a microfinance bank, and she seemed baffled by the gossip. "Have you actually spoken to her?" she asked me one evening as we sat on the veranda watching the sunset. "Have you asked her where she goes?" "Some things don't need to be asked," I replied, sounding more self-righteous than I intended. Chidinma sighed. "You people are something else. You see a young woman working hard, and you assume the worst. Maybe she has her reasons. Maybe she's doing something important." "Oh, come on," I said, incredulous. What important thing could she possibly be doing every night from 9:45 p.m. to 6 a.m.? That's not a normal schedule. "Maybe she's a nurse working night shifts at the hospital," Chidinma suggested. "My cousin does that. He works all night, sleeps all day." "She doesn't have any medical training." "Okay then, maybe she works at one of those call centers. They operate 24/7. I shook my head. "Chidinma, you're new here. You don't understand. I've seen the way she dresses when she leaves. All that makeup, those nice clothes. Those are not the clothes of a nurse or a call center worker." "You've never heard of dressing up for work?" Chidinma persisted. "People want to look good for their jobs." "Maybe," I conceded, but nothing. You have already decided what she is, and nothing I say will change your mind." Chidinma stood up, brushing off her skirt. "You know what I think? I think people gossip because it makes them feel better about themselves. When you're busy judging someone else, you don't have to look at your own flaws." She walked away, leaving me staring at the sunset with a troubled conscience. By the end of the 8th month, the atmosphere in the compound had become toxic. The gossip had reached a fever pitch, and even those who had tried to remain neutral found themselves drawn into the drama. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Funke had just returned from her nightly journey, and she was standing by the communal tap, trying to fill a small basin with water. Her hands were shaking, and I could see that she was struggling to lift the plastic container. "Let me help you," I said, surprising myself. For all my judgment, I was still a man, and I was raised to help women with heavy things. Funke looked up, startled. "Mr. Cunley, I can manage, thank you." "Nonsense," I said, taking the basin from her. You look exhausted. Have you been sleeping at all? She laughed, a hollow sound. Sleep? What is sleep? I can't remember the last time I had a full night. Maybe you should. I stopped myself. I was about to suggest she find a more respectable job, but the words died in my throat. Who was I to judge? I had never been in her position, never had to make the kinds of choices she was apparently making. Maybe I should what? Funk asked, her eyes narrowing. She knew what I had been about to say. Nothing, I said quickly. I just worry about you. You and your father. He's a good man. Yes, he is, she said, her voice softening. He's the best man I know, and I would do anything for him. There was something in the way she said it, a fierce determination, a protective instinct that made me pause, but the moment passed and she took her basin of water and walked away. That evening, I was sitting in my room when I heard the commotion. Bro Emeka had just returned from his bolt driving shift, and he was pacing in the courtyard, his face a mask of shock. "Mr. Kunle! Mr. Kunle!" he called out. "Come out! I need to speak with you." I went down to find him in a state of agitation. His hands were trembling and his eyes were red. "What is it?" I asked, concerned. "What happened? Is it one of your passengers?" "Funk," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I saw Funk tonight." This wasn't surprising. We all knew Funky went out every night. "But where did you see her?" I pressed. "What happened?" Bro Emeka took a deep breath. He looked around the compound to make sure no one else was listening, then grabbed my arm and pulled me close. "I picked up a ride from the industrial estate in Ikeja," he said, his voice shaking. "A factory, plastics manufacturing. When I got there, the workers were coming out from their night shift, and guess who I saw dragging her feet toward my car?" I felt a chill run down my spine. "Funk?" "Funka!" "Yes." She was covered in plastic dust, wearing work boots and a factory uniform. She looked like she had been working in hell for the past 8 hours. I couldn't believe my eyes. "Are you sure it was her?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Mr. Kunle, I've known that girl since she was a child. I would recognize her anywhere, even if she was wearing 10 layers of dust." The pieces began to fall into place. The exhaustion, the dark circles, the sleeping during the day, the need to leave at night. "But why?" I asked. "Why would she be working at a factory?" Bro Emeka's face grew somber. "I asked her the same thing, Mr. Kunle, and she broke down. She couldn't stop crying. She made me promise not to tell anyone, especially her father." He paused, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "She told me that Babatunde's glaucoma has gotten terrible. He needs urgent surgery. It costs 2.5 million naira. But his pension hasn't been paid in over 2 years. The government has abandoned him. And his extended family, his brothers, his cousins, they told him to double our rent to raise the money. But Babatunde refused. He said it would be wicked to punish his tenants for his health problems." The air felt heavy, suffocating. I understood everything now, the makeup, the perfume, the expensive clothes. It was all a cover, a disguise to make her father believe she was living a normal life. "She didn't want him to know she was working at a factory," I said slowly. "She didn't want him to feel like a burden." "Yes," Bro Emeka said. "She said her father is a proud man. If he knew she was doing hard labor to pay for his surgery, He would rather go blind than accept her sacrifice. We stood there in the darkness, two men who had judged a young woman harshly, now learning the truth that had been hidden in plain sight. "What do we do?" I asked. "We can't keep this secret." "We have to tell the compound," Bro Emeka said firmly. "They need to know the truth. They need to understand what Funka has been doing for the past 8 months, what she's been sacrificing." "The gossip," I started. "The gossip is exactly why we need to tell them," Bro Emeka interrupted. "Iya, Bimpe, and the others, they need to understand. They need to see the damage their words have caused." The next morning, Bro Emeka sent a message to our compound WhatsApp group. It was a simple message, but its contents would change everything. "Good morning, everyone. I need to share something important with all of you. Please gather in the courtyard at 7 a.m. It concerns Funka and Baba Tunde." Within minutes, the compound was buzzing with confusion. People emerged from their apartments, their faces etched with curiosity and suspicion. "What is this about?" Aya Bimpe demanded as she settled onto a plastic chair in the courtyard. "Why are we being called like this? Is it about the water pump again?" "Just wait," Bro Emeka said. "You'll understand soon enough." Funka wasn't there. She had retired to her room after her shift, and no one had thought to wake her. Baba Tunde, too, was still in his apartment, likely wondering why the compound had suddenly turned into a meeting ground. Bro Emeka stood in the center of the courtyard, his face pale but determined. He was holding a small photograph that he had taken on his phone the night before. A picture of Funka standing in front of the factory, her work uniform covered in white dust. "Before I say anything," Bro Emeka began, "I want everyone to look at this picture." He passed the phone around, and one by one, the faces of our neighbors changed. Eyes widened. Mouths fell open. Iya Bimpe let out a sharp gasp. Is that Funka?" she asked, her voice small. "Yes," Bro Emeka said. "That's Funka, in her work uniform, at the plastics factory where she has been working every single night for the past 8 months." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I could see the confusion on everyone's faces. This was not what they had expected. "But the gossip," Iya Ngozi said. "The perfume, the makeup. We thought wrong," Bro Emeka interrupted. "We thought she was a runs girl. We thought she was involved in all sorts of shameful things. But the truth is that Funky has been doing hard labor every night to pay for her father's eye surgery." He went on to explain everything: the glaucoma, the 2.5 million naira cost, the unpaid pension, Baba Tunde's refusal to raise the rent, and finally, Funka's decision to take the night shift at the factory. "At first she was just working a few hours," Bro Emeka said. "But when she realized the surgery was urgent, she started taking double shifts. That's why she's been coming home at 6 a.m. instead of midnight. That's why she looks so exhausted. That's why she sleeps all day. Her father still thinks she's going out at night to have fun," I added. "She wears makeup and perfume so he won't suspect anything. She doesn't want him to feel guilty for needing the surgery." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as Iya Bimpe's face contorted with shame. Tears began to stream down her cheeks. "All the gossip," she sobbed. "All the things we said about her. And she was out there breaking her back to help her father." "I called her a runs girl," one of the younger women admitted, her voice thick with guilt. "I said she was bringing shame to her family. And all this time, she was working in a factory to save her father's eyesight. Did you notice how she never defended herself? Chidinma said quietly. Whenever we ignored her or gave her attitude, she would just smile and say, "Good morning, Ma," and go back inside. She never complained. She never explained. She just kept suffering in silence. The revelation hit us like a physical blow. We had judged her mercilessly, and she had borne it all with a dignity we didn't deserve. Bro Emeka pulled out his phone again. "There's something else," he said. I asked Funke how much she had saved so far. She showed me her account. She's been working 7 nights a week, sometimes pulling 12-hour shifts, and she's managed to save 1.7 million naira. 1.7 million naira, I repeated. In 8 months? She's been giving everything to the surgery fund, Bro Emeka said. She barely eats. She barely buys anything for herself. The only money she spends is on the perfume and makeup she uses to keep up the charade with her father. God in heaven, Aya Bimpe whispered. What have we done? What have we done? The meeting that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced in our compound. It wasn't a meeting of neighbors anymore. It was a meeting of people united by shame and a desperate need to make things right. We need to help them, I said. We can't just sit here feeling guilty. We need to do something. What can we do? Iya Ngozi asked. We're not rich. Most of us are barely getting by. We can still contribute what we can, Bro Emeka said. And we can start by apologizing to Funke. She needs to know that we understand the truth now, that we were wrong. The decision was unanimous. We would approach Funke together, admit our shame, and ask for her forgiveness. But before that, we had one more task. We started a collection. People emptied their wallets. Iya Bimpe pulled out the money she had been saving for her daughter's school fees. Bro Emeka contributed his entire week's earnings from Bolt. Even the teenagers in the compound, who had been among the most vocal in their judgment, chipped in their pocket money. By the time we were done, we had raised 800,000 naira. It wasn't the full 2.5 million naira, but it was a significant start. That afternoon, we gathered outside Baba Tunde's apartment. Bro Emeka knocked on the door, and a few moments later, Funke opened it. She looked even more exhausted than usual, her eyes puffy from crying. "What is this?" she asked, seeing the crowd of us standing outside. "Is something wrong? Is it my father?" "No, Funke," Bro Emeka said gently. "Nothing is wrong. We just need to speak with you. And your father, if he's available." Baba Tunde appeared behind his daughter, his face etched with concern. "What is going on? Is everyone okay? Is the compound okay?" "Everyone is fine, Baba," I said. "We just want to talk. Can we come in?" The apartment was modest but clean. Baba Tunde's pensioner's furniture, a worn sofa, a wooden table with only 3 chairs, spoke of a life lived modestly but with dignity. A framed photograph of Funke's mother hung on the wall, her gentle smile watching over the room. "What is this about?" Baba Tunde asked as he settled onto the sofa. His eyes, clouded by the glaucoma, couldn't quite focus on any of us. I took a deep breath. This was going to be one of the most difficult things I had ever done. "Baba Tunde," I began, "we want to apologize, all of us." "Apologize?" He looked genuinely confused. "For what?" "For judging your daughter," Iya Bimpe said, her voice choking. "For spreading wicked gossip about her. for treating her with suspicion and disrespect. Baba Tunde's expression shifted from confusion to surprise. Funke? What did she do? What are you talking about? We didn't know the truth, Baba, I explained. We didn't know about your glaucoma. We didn't know about the surgery. We didn't know that Funke has been working every single night at a factory to pay for it. The old man's face went pale. He turned toward the direction of his daughter's voice. Funk? Is this true? Is this what you've been doing? Funke, who had been standing silently by the door, began to cry. The tears that had been building for 8 months finally broke through. Baba, I had to, she sobbed. You needed the surgery. The doctors said if we waited any longer, you could go blind. And your pension... My pension, Baba Tunde repeated, his voice trembling. My pension hasn't been paid in 2 years. But Funke, I told you not to worry. I told you I would find a way. There was no other way, Baba. The family wanted to double the rent, but you refused. You said it was wicked. But what about me? Was I supposed to just watch you go blind? The tears were flowing freely now. I saw Bro Emeka wiping his eyes. I saw Aya Bimpe openly weeping. Even I had to fight to keep my composure. Baba, Bro Emeka said, stepping forward. We have all been terrible people. We saw Funke leaving at night, and we made assumptions. Wicked, evil assumptions. We didn't know she was working in a factory. We didn't know she was breaking her back for you. We've collected some money, I added. It's not everything, but it's a start. 800,000 naira. We want to help. We want to make amends. Baba Tunde was crying now, his weathered face crumpled with emotion. My Funke, he said. My good, kind daughter. You did all of this for me and I had no idea. Of course I did, Baba, Funke said, rushing to her father's side. You're the best father in the world. You gave up everything for me. You never remarried. You raised me alone. The least I could do was... Nonsense, Baba Tunde interrupted. The least you could do? You gave up your health, your sleep, your dignity. You let people judge you, mock you, and you never said a word to defend yourself. I didn't care about what people thought, Funke said. I only cared about you. Baba Tunde wrapped his arms around his daughter, holding her tight. My daughter, he whispered. My brave, foolish daughter. In the weeks that followed, our compound changed. The gossip that had once flowed so freely dried up completely. There were no more whispers by the water-pumping machine. No more speculative conversations under the moonlight. Instead, there was something else, a sense of community that had been missing for years. People started helping each other. Iya Bimpe began cooking extra meals to share with her neighbors. Bro Emeka offered free rides to anyone who needed to go to the hospital or market. And Funke? She finally stopped working at the factory. With the money we had raised, plus additional contributions from a GoFundMe page that Chidinma set up, we were able to cover the full cost of Baba Tunde's surgery. The surgery was a success. Baba Tunde's eyesight began to improve almost immediately. Within a month, he could see clearly enough to read his Bible without glasses. The first thing he did when his vision returned was to look at his daughter. You're beautiful, he said, tears streaming down his face. You are the most beautiful daughter a father could ever have. Funke laughed through her tears. Baba, stop it. You're going to make me cry again. Good tears, he said. These are good tears. The compound threw a celebration in his honor. We set up tables in the courtyard, brought out chairs from our various apartments, and prepared a feast that would rival any wedding. There was jollof rice, fried chicken, moi moi, and enough pounded yam to feed an army. As we ate and laughed and danced, I looked around at my neighbors and felt a profound sense of gratitude. We had been given a second chance, an opportunity to right our wrongs and become the community we should have been all along. Baba Tunde stood up to make a speech, his voice strong and clear. "I want to thank you all," he said. "Not for the money, not for the support, but for seeing my daughter, for seeing who she really is." "We were wrong about her, Baba," Aya Bimpe admitted. "We saw only what we wanted to see. We judged her without knowing the truth." "We all did," I added, "but we're trying to be better now." Baba Tunde nodded. "That's all any of us can do. Try to be better. Try to see the good in each other instead of the bad." The speech was followed by a musical performance from the young people of the compound. They had prepared a song, a beautiful melody about love and understanding, and they performed it with a passion that brought everyone to tears. Funky was sitting beside me, and she leaned over to whisper in my ear, "Thank you, Mr. Conley, for everything." I shook my head. "Don't thank me, I was one of the worst. I judged you along with everyone else." "You did," she said, "but you also helped. You listened to Bro Emeka. You organized the meeting. You made it right." "It was the least I could do," I said. "After everything we put you through." Funko was silent for a moment. Then she said, "You know what I realized through all of this? The people who judge you the most are usually the ones who don't know you at all. They create a story in their heads and they believe it, even if it has nothing to do with reality." I nodded. "That's a lesson I won't forget." "Neither will I," Funka said. "But I also learned something else. I learned that even in the darkest times, there are people who will surprise you. People who will show you kindness when you least expect it." She smiled at me, and in that moment, I saw the real Funka for the first time. Not the girl we had made up in our gossip, but the brave, selfless, determined young woman who had sacrificed everything for the man she loved. A year has passed since that memorable day. I'm sitting on the veranda of my apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The compound is quieter now, more peaceful. The gossip has given way to genuine conversations, the suspicion replaced by trust. Baba Tunde's eyesight is fully restored. He's become something of a local celebrity, a symbol of hope and resilience in our community. He often sits in the courtyard telling stories to anyone who will listen. His favorite story is about his daughter, the one who saved him, not just from blindness, but from despair. Funk has gone back to school. She's studying nursing, determined to help others the way she helped her father. She still works, but now it's a part-time job at a local clinic. She doesn't have to hide anymore. She doesn't have to pretend. The other day, I saw her talking to Iya Bimpe in the courtyard. They were laughing, the kind of easy laughter that comes from a genuine friendship. I couldn't help but smile. "What are you smiling about?" Chidinma asked, joining me on the veranda. I gestured toward Funka and Iya Bimpe. "Just thinking about how much things have changed." Chidinma nodded. "People change, communities change. It's beautiful, really." "Not always," I said. "Sometimes people stay the same. They hold on to their prejudices and their judgment. It's easier that way. True, Chidinma agreed. But some people learn, some people grow. I thought about my own growth, the journey I had taken from judgment to understanding. I had been so sure of my assumptions, so confident in my conclusions. And I had been so wrong. Funky taught us something important, I said. She taught us not to judge people without knowing their full story. She showed us that sometimes the people we look down on are the ones who are fighting the hardest battles. Chidinma was silent for a moment. Then she said, "You know, the Bible says, 'Judge not, that you be not judged.' For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." I nodded. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About all the times I judged people unfairly. All the times I assumed the worst. None of us are perfect, Chidinma said gently. But we can try to be better. Every day we can try to be better. A warm breeze swept through the compound, carrying the scent of jasmine and the sound of Funka's laughter. I watched her as she walked back to her apartment, her step light and carefree. She was finally at peace, and so was I.